And good evening. Here we are on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot, your Sensei Al Bob, and I welcome you. And may I say right off the bat, don't believe anything I say. So here we are in the blinking light holiday season, and it's interesting. I'm on the bop. I'm kind of couch surfing. I have no real place to stay, but so far the universe has been very generous. I'm staying at a friend of mine's farm, house sitting for a little bit, and a couple of days ago I was talking to a friend of mine, and she sang for you, and she's quite an amazing human being. And she has had every obstacle you can imagine, but she never gives up. She never complains. She doesn't have parents giving her thousands of dollars a month, you know, and she's always ready to. I mean, she does all these amazing performances for community, and she really gets nothing. No one really pays her, and people should really. She's an amazing talent, but people are glad to use her, but not really pay her what she's worth. And that's why I put forth the idea of the traveling video art circus. Right? And that's why I left the deep green. I've been talking about this. I'm right now. I think today is the 1st of December, so we're down to 13 months of the window of opportunity. And I observe. I'm a person who I'm like George Carlin. You know, I'm not quite the comedic genius he is, but I am the observer, and that's pretty much what he did. I mean, he really didn't like humanity, and I'm not a big fan of humanity. What I am is an artist in the first person that is the pebble in the pond of all our relations, you know, everything. That's all of love's co creation. It's the universe. The only power in the universe is love's co creation. And though I'm, a person who analyzes things, I do have emotions. I do feel things very deeply. And the fact that, you know, some trolls out there, you know, I look at all of my shows that I put up, and they are, 6 or 7 people give me a thumbs up, and there are 12 that down. Obviously, you know, the people who give me a thumbs down, they're either prejudice, and when I use that word, people go, "Well, some of my best friends are black." No, that's not prejudice. That's being racist when you dislike someone for the color of their skin. Prejudice is when you have a belief that prejudices your ability to interact with the rest of the human race, you know? Whatever that belief is, you look at the Nazis, you look at all of the, communists, socialists, capitalists, all those ists. Those are all prejudices. And they're ready to, look at our country right now. And, people think, oh, it's so terrible. No, the world actually is in a pretty good shape. There are more educated people, more fed people, more, opportunity today than there ever has been. Right now, ever has been, let's say, in the last 900 years, give or take. But that window of opportunity is shrinking, And are we ready to change our ways? And the only way to change our ways is through our culture. Right now, we serve, that's what our culture is, that we serve um, materialism. We value wealth, right? And fame, huh? And notoriety, you know, and and we are mostly controlled by fear, you know, and that's why they I continue to talk about the canary in the coal mine. He's a great example of the human race um, having all these great opportunities and ignoring them because of fear. You know, oh, it's so hard for me to do this. Oh, no, you know, I'm in pain constantly. I'm really sick, but I don't let that stop me. I keep a certain balance of my homeostasis, which allows me to endocrinologist, my podiatrist, my bone doctor, they can't even understand how I walk. They want to chop my legs off, you know. And I don't even, I don't have a walker or canes or crutches or, you know, all the things I had when I was really sick. I used to have these braces on my legs. I don't have any of that, right? In my ankles, neuropathy in my charcoal legs have turned those little bones that connect my ankles to my feet um, to mush, right? I shouldn't be able to walk. I shouldn't be able to go up the stairs I'm having to go up. I shouldn't be able to walk up and down the paths of the deep green, but I do. Because one's life is not to live we live on a planet of abundance. We serve love's co-creation, and we will be whatever we need will be given, right? But most people are in fear, right? And self-loathing. That is one of the largest problems there is self-loathing, right? People would rather be miserable than to have a beautiful life. I'd rather have a beautiful life than, be rich and I live a life of a millionaire. I don't need to be one. The canary in the coal mine. You make me so anxious. You're so mean. And what I cause anxiety in the canary in the coal mine is that I am who I am. I walk into a room and I am just myself. Right? I don't have to pretend to be anything else. I've had over 70 years of an extraordinary life, blessed by love's co-creation, right? And if you go to my xratted.blogspot.com, you will see that all of my novels are about the contextual differences between what people expect, what people think, what people are told, and what's going on, right? And everything I write is a metaphor, right? Every sentence, every paragraph is like 400 paragraphs, condensed down into one. And that's why a lot of people have a hard time reading it. I wrote it so you have to read it 6 times to go, oh, that's what he's talking about, right? And because my writings are as the artist in the first person, they are to express myself, right? They're not to be, find fame and fortune. I would like people to read them. I would like people to read them and get something out of it that they can navigate their life out of their position of desperation. Now, our society, basically designs itself. If you go listen to George Carlin's records and his home box office videos, he was a great philosopher. He was like the Socrates of our time, or maybe the Plato of our time. And he kind of talks. Before David Icke was talking about the reptiles running the show. Um, George was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He was talking about, hey, we don't belong to the club. There's a small group of people who rule the world, and we're not one of them, right? And that's, we have been in that slave motif, since Samaria, Babylon, since you know, the Anunnaki and the other folks from other dimensions and places came here and, genetically played with our cousins, the apes, and made us, Now people go, well, we're made the image likeness of God, Yes, the Nephilim, we call them gods. You go to the Egyptian scriptures and they're the gods. You go to the Greeks, there are all these gods up in the clouds. So I don't really know how much time I have left, and that's fine. I've died 6 times. I'm ready to go. I'm not really worrying about dying. I'm not even worrying. I'm sick. I'm not letting it. Meaning, when I woke up from dying in that plate of spaghetti, I was on a gurney heading for the operating room, and I didn't sign anything. And they were ready to cut my legs open, crack me open, and replumb my heart. Oh, you have this embolism here. You have, you need a quadruple bypass. No, I didn't need that. What I needed was a colonic, and I needed to stop eating the 20,000 calories a day I was eating when I worked for the, desperate lawyers. So, and I stopped, and I readjusted myself. I kind of had to because I was so sick, but I kind of came back out of that. I mean, I'm still, all the things that I had, they're not going away, but I can navigate them, right? And so can you, you know, and every day in every way, if you take the piece of the earth and you make it stronger, you'll make your life better, right? You'll make, you'll have whatever you need. You don't have to, I don't worry about anything, you know. The canary in the coal mine has this amazing house that he's turned into Pee Wee's fun house, which is great. I don't know if George and Inga Solanovich would be happy about what he had done with the place, but they might. I'm not going to be one to judge. I mean, he did a really great job. He did a lot of physical things that needed to be done to save that place, right? So it's going to survive another, X amount of years. But it's like his prison. He has not come down from there at all. He's been there now almost 4 years. He's left his family run away from him. And they were here for a good year and a half of the time that I knew him. He never went to see them. They were only 6 miles down the road. Now they're, 1,000 miles away. Oh, and it's so difficult to go there. And that's why, the canary in the coal mine, people go, well, how can you deal with that guy? I mean, why. Hey, I feel empathy for him, no matter how many times and whatever he does. I mean, he's taking personal things from out of the piles of stuff that I've left there, only because he won't let me go and take it away or go through it. And he's put it, how would you like all your personal life, from your family, um, you know, being used on, not being, you know, And that's stuff that I revere. That's I hold dear to my heart. That's really important to me. But you know, but why do I you know put up with um, the canary in the coal mine? Well, I don't really have to put up with him. I haven't been around him for 230 days now, and that's fine by me. But he is still my friend, and I care about him. Right? I called him up a day or so after Thanksgiving, after not talking to him for a while, and asked him how he was doing, because he every now and then he vents to my messaging, and says all kinds of mean and hurtful things. Now, when someone does that, they're actually talking about themselves. Whatever anyone says mean and hurtful things about you, you just have to realize that whatever that person is saying, they're talking about themselves. And and so when I see someone hurting like that, I have empathy for them. Yes, of course, being treated poorly. I don't. I'm not a saint. It can hurt my feelings. It can make me go, but I understand that that person has, real issues, because they have never faced anything in their life. Me, from birth, I died. I was strangled by my birth cord, you know, and I that kind of did it to my throat. So I had a stutter. I couldn't speak. That was what made me very observant, because I couldn't speak. So I watched, I looked. That's what made me very truthful. Right? The other thing was that I had this line to Bob, where I always had good thoughts. People would say really mean, cruel thoughts. Things were going on around me that were not happy, but I had positive thoughts. So I had the words I could get out would be positive, right? Which would bring positive actions, which would bring positive um, deeds, which would bring positive outcomes. So my life, though could be challenging, could be difficult, always had a positive outcome, right? So if you read my novels, you will get a good idea of all the adventures I had, and I've told you numbers of stories. Now I know I must have over 700, um, stories up there. And here it is, 18 minutes and 18 seconds, and there's two people watching. Now, that guy in Sweden or Denmark or wherever he is, Platypus or Pootie Pie, that guy, does a YouTube about the color of his fingernails, and in 15 minutes, 20 million people are watching him. You know. Now, I go and I've looked at, I look at a lot of stuff. A lot of people leave a lot of stuff on my thing. Now, the interesting thing about my channel is there's almost 50,000 people watching it, but there's only 340 subscribers. And there's only two people on a live chat here. Now, I went on. It's about, what time is it now? It's about 10 o'clock. And I went on this evening because I just got in from the cold. I was helping a friend, and so I just got home a little bit while ago. And I know there are a lot of you in Ireland and New Zealand and all over the place. And when I do something at night, it's daytime for you guys. When I do something during the day here, it's nighttime for you. So I thought I'd go on and wish you a happy everything. And, and I would love to have a conversation, live chat. What is live chat? That's when you guys, say something, I constantly tell you how I feel, what I'm going through, Let's see. Let's see if that goes up there. Yep. See. So the live chat works. You guys could talk. You know. And what's really interesting is what's right in front of our faces. You know. Andrew Jackson, where are you staying? I'm on the road. I am in an undisclosed location. I'm in a place that I have no control of whatsoever, but the folks who I am staying at are much more, they have own zero, and yet they are generous to share their space with me. Right? Unlike the canary, who's got, unlimited resources and a 7,000 square foot space where he's been all by himself for the last 240 days. So I'm on the road. Andrew Jackson, you want to let me stay at your couch? I left Deep Green. I could have stayed there. It would have been a little more difficult because back about a month ago, we had about a week and a half of 30-degree weather during the day and 9-degree weather at night. And we had a little bit of snow. And I knew that, like right now, I've called up a friend in that neck of the woods, and they've had a good foot of snow. Well, that would have been pretty tough for me to get around. And if I were to lose electricity in the Deep Green when it's 9 degrees below zero and a foot of snow, I'd be dead, right? So Love's Co-Creation keeps telling me I have things to do. I have, died 6 times and I haven't, been able to go home yet because I have stuff to do. And I have learned in my life. So I've lived all around the world, right? And I've lived in many, many beautiful, amazing places that I could have stayed in. I'd still be there now. But all of them had changed. And I was there at the quintessential best time. When I was in Negril, Jamaica, it was the best time to be there. It was before the corporations moved in, before there was even a road, before there was electricity or running water or toilets. I was there, but everyone who was there were beautiful people, right? And I lived with the real Rastas up in the red ground, Rastafari, you could see it in their eyes, And everybody who showed up there were really interesting folk, When I lived in Asheville, it was a place that was, an amazing city. Now it's now it's a cesspool, People are drinking their own feces, and the city doesn't even tell them, just like Flint, right? Because the people who die from it are tourists. They come in. If you have a compromised immune system, you sure don't want to drink Asheville's drinking water, or for that matter, you really don't want to drink any water system that has been around for more than 60 years because they haven't kept it up. Just like the gas systems in Massachusetts that blew up earlier this year or last year, that killed like 50 people, burned down, a number, thousands of houses. And did you really hear that over the news? Oh, you got to hear a little bit of it. Or what's going on in California? They're depopulating that state. They're burning out neighborhoods where they don't want people there anymore. They're they're not going to get rid of them. They're going to stack and pack. If you go watch everything in the movies is what we're going to experience. That movie, Spielberg, J.J. Abrams were 2 guys who signed on to be the muse of the New World Order, right? And so, Steven Spielberg's movie, Player One, shows the near future where everyone's, living in a virtual reality. So there can be totally controlled. I kind of told you guys about back in the day. Hey there, research. How you doing? Uh, Looking good. Yep. Um, when I was in Cornell in Ithaca, New York, which is another beautiful city that I could have stayed at, and but they built the what was euphemistically called the Math Center, which what it was if you ever been to Cornell or go on Google and look at it, their campus looks very 19th century, very Tudorist, right? And very much like Hogwarts, but a little more American. But there is one building there that is about 30 stories high, and it looks like the 2001 a monolith, and that's called the Math Center. And what it was, it's a DARPA research center, right? And Cornell is very like you go to any of the national laboratories. Check out what, Bob? You need to copy and paste the link. Okay. Hayden, you can send me any link to my the dude awake 42 at Gmail. That's the easiest for me anyway, to look at the stuff you want me to look at. So any of you guys want to send me anything, it's at Gmail, right? And that's the dude awake 42 at Gmail. And if you want to send something for the seasons in my PayPal, that would be great, because I'm just going on fumes here, But what I'm planning to do is I'm going to visit anyone who wants me to come and be with you. And if you go look at the last video I did with my friend, Bernadette, who's got the great voice, I gave her some stuff to read. I said, here, read this, and she sang it. I said, here, sing this. And she is one of the most talented people I know. And she's ready to get on the bus. She's ready to leave tomorrow to take the traveling video art circuit. She's ready to make that leap, because I've known her long enough, and she knows that I can make anything happen, right? Because I've helped her make a lot of things happen, right? So we have a lot of experience together. And there are 3 or 4 other people who are ready to go. But, I'm going to need some of you of the cadre, You can stay in your safe little life. You can stay in the basement with your mom's house. You can, keep that same, job at Ingalls or whatever. You can stay in the, and I'm saying if that is really your calling, if that's the direction you want to be, if that's what makes you happy, if that's what gives you service to love's co-creation in every day and every way, well, that's fine. You shouldn't let anybody, even me, tell you what to do. All I'm offering you is the opportunity to do something in your life that will make you, that will be a memory, And, what's very interesting about life is that the only thing that can't be destroyed are memories, and as a shrink, I was taught that our memory banks are, Freudian psychology, as you go and you talk to the person, so what's wrong, and you have them talk out all of their memories, right, until they can see them for what they are, right? Now, unless you are conscious, the story of Buddha on the side of the road, and they need to copy and paste this link. So again, Jackson, remember the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Send any links there. Put any money in my PayPal. I'd love it, right? So Buddha's on the side of the road, right? And he's just there in his celestial, photonic glory, and a traveler, goes by and goes, "Wow, who are you, God, man? Are you God?" And Buddha looks at him and goes, "No." Well, what are you, man? You a magician? What are you, man? And Buddha says, I am awake. And that is the real crux to our lives, because for us, we are here. This body, this is just an avatar. It's not who you are, right? It's like Doctor Who dies and he gets a new body, right? And that's what we do, right? Doctor Who, and all of these things that are art are these like little, pebbles in the pond making waves. And that TV show, Doctor Who is very good because it acts as a great vehicle to show the observer what's going on, and because otherwise you're just caught in the illusion. Oh, I have to have that new set of shoes. Oh, I got a 70-inch flat screen. I need a 90-inch. Otherwise my life sucks, I need this new pair of shorts, or I need this new car, or I need this, no. You need to serve love's co-creation. Now, however you do that is up to you. And you have to be awake to be able to do that, right? Meet cage for the consciousness. Explain that one a little bit more, Mr. Jackson. So at Ithaca in 1991, I was there doing research, right? I was a itinerant scholar, right? And a friend of mine got me into that school, right, to do this kind of work. And she knew I could do it. She wanted me to get out of New York City, and so she did. She came down, drove me. She was in charge of admissions. She just came down in her car, threw me in the car, drove me up to Ithaca, and said, "You're now going to school here." I kind of went around and saw the different departments, and I met this one guy who was quite the interesting scholar and not a scholastic. And I started studying with him, right? And he was a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist, right? And he had studied with Maslow. He had studied with, you name it, he had studied with them. And I was in my 30s and he was in his 60s. And he liked me. So he said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "I got a project for you, kid. Here, work on this." And I did, And, think about how this could fit into what you're doing with that. And I did. And I did everything he wanted me to do. I was like his best boy, just like, I was Lester Polikoff's best boy in theater. Lester Polikoff was Joe Mills Zener's best boy, right? Lester Polikoff did the scenery and sets and lights for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Death of a Salesman, hundreds of plays. Go look up Lester Polikoff on Google. And Joe Mills Zener, right? And that's where I came from in the theater world, right? And I worked for people like Herbert Berghoff and Uta Hagen at the HB Studios. I worked at the Living Theater. I worked at the Theater for the New City. I worked for, Bob Goddard, who owned Pig Lights and Joshua Light Show. And all of those people appreciated my skill sets and allowed me, it wasn't a 9-to-5 job. They would give me things to do and I would go and do them. Because I was doing other stuff, I was going to school, I was, being an artist, I was being an activist, I was being all these things that I wasn't, I was doing them to serve love's co-creation, right? And I was making plenty of money. I never, in all of those years of never having a job, I never had to worry about money because I always got somebody who said, I want you to do this for me. And how much do you want for me to do that? And I said, and I would give them a big high price spread, My grandmother said to me, and so did Grandpa Stoll, and so did um, uh, Billy Kluver, told me, never work for anyone who doesn't need you more than you need them. And I've always been, worked for people of that nature. Or, on the contrary, I worked with and for people who truly appreciated me. Now, I would get myself involved in things where I was, those people didn't even realize they needed me, and a good example is, um, the canary in the coal mine. He doesn't realize he needs me. Now, he has a pseudo sexual attraction towards me, and then when I just am me, um, it a frightens him, it upsets him, and makes him anxious because he can't be himself, right? And but he doesn't appreciate. I mean, he didn't appreciate all those meals, and he did that one little TV show of him, making eggs, and he says, "Oh, I've learned how to cook," and he kind of was talking, and he would talk about, me making food for him, and oh, what's up, Mr. Jackson? Yes, that's what an avatar is. It's a vessel for your consciousness, right? And we are put on this little playground, this Garden of Eden, which it is. Earth is a Garden of Eden. If you go look out just in our solar system, those other planets are not very habitable. And so we've been put on this one, and it is kind of a prison. There are certain fields around it that the Van Allen belt is a good example. But it makes it a little tough for us to leave more. We can't go any further than 500 miles above terra firma, and then it gets a little iffy, right? And so there are lots of ways to protect yourself from the radiation and the this and the that, but it's still a crapshoot. Just like living on this planet. I mean, that sun of ours shoots off X flares. It's 360 degrees, and at least 5 or 6 a month are getting shot all over the place. But if we were ever in the crosshairs of the sun's X flares, that would be it. Now, we have been in the crosshairs of that sun's X flares. And there was one in the latter part of the 19th century, in the 1870s, 80s. You go look it up. And what happened was this X flare came down, hit the planet. Well, we didn't have too much electronics. We didn't have electricity quite yet. We didn't have any radios or any of that. We had the telegraph, right? And when that X flare hit this planet and the part of our planet that was facing straight towards it, it fried every telegraph wire on the planet. And the other thing it did, because of the railroad tracks being made out of metal, they're like two conductors. And so when that X flare came down and hit those things, it put so much energy. One of those tracks was a positive, and the other, and it twisted them up like a pretzel. Go look that up. Go look up the Chicago fire. It wasn't Chicago started out as a city, in the early 19th century. That was, location. It was right off the Great Lakes, and that was our only means of transportation. And once we started so they would bring the cattle first to Roanoke, and then, Roanoke was like the deep west, and it was called Salt Lick because all the cows would come here. There was salt they would lick, and but then the trains came, right, and Chicago had two fires. One when it was a wooden city, and that was Mrs. or somebody's lamp knocked over, and it was a windy evening, and it kind of, but it was, the population of Chicago when that fire happened was somewhere between 60 and 120,000. The Chicago fire that everyone talks about was the one in the latter part of the 19th century. And by that time, Chicago was a city of concrete, stone, and steel. And the fire that hit it was a chunk of an asteroid or a comet. And because it didn't just, obliterate Chicago, it took out other, areas around the Midwest. There's a guy who was there. He was a reporter for the New York Herald Tribune, which was one of the best newspapers on the planet. And it still is there. If you go online, the Herald Tribune is still online. And they have some pretty good departments. Anyway, so he was their science editor, and he was in the neighborhood when that thing happened in Chicago. And he reported, because it was like a nuclear weapon went off. It just evaporated parts of the city, right? It wasn't no just little fire from a knocked over kerosene lantern. And that was Fodor. And so if you go Google Fordian Society, he tried to write about all this amazing stuff that was happening around the world. And, the powers that be didn't want people to know about this stuff. So he started a society of people kind of like MUFON. Nobody wants to hear about flying saucers, but, every day there's thousands of sightings. So MUFON does a pretty good job at least documenting them, right? Let's see. Johnny Jackson. Of course, schools are prisons, but, the facility itself is just a facility, So you can use the facility for a very high moral point of view, or like, Cornell is like Darth Vader. I mean, that facility. So there I was looking at social, and anthropologic and psychologic issues, and I was looking at trends. The guy I worked for was a psychosocial cultural forensic anthropologist, and he had degrees in all of that stuff. And he studied with the greats of the great, and he sent me off later on. He gave me letters of introduction to go meet with other people. So, and I would go up to conferences because he got tired of going to them, but I would represent him. So that's how I met a lot of people myself. And I had other teachers before that. And this was in the 90s when I was at Cornell. So anyway, 88 to 91 was when I was at Cornell. So they built this big thing. And my boss said, hey, you need to go over to the Math Center. I got, they wanted me to be part of this study. I don't really want to do it. Why don't you do it? It might be good for you. So I go over there and, I get clearance. I mean, it was the only building in all of Cornell that you needed clearance to go into, that actually had guards at the door. I don't know what is going on with that building now, even if it's because they built it on a sacred site. All of Cornell was, Colonel Cornell stole the land from the Iroquois Nation. And it was one of their more sacred places because this river runs right through it. There are all these waterfalls, and water is very, very sacred. So just like at the school, at the Hill, the school has two waterfalls on either side of it. It's the Cherokee's most sacred spot, and the Canary in the Coal Mines just turned it into Pee Wee's Playhouse, And the thing about the Hill, why most people who were up on that hill, who lived up there, would kind of either go crazy or become alcoholics or stuck on any singular thing. The only person who wasn't um, malabused by the hill was Inga. Because, see, the hill wasn't evil per se. It would just give you anything you want, right? So, the canary is basically representing, I feel anxious all the time. Well, the hill goes, well, oh, you want to be anxious? Well, I'll make you doubly anxious. I'll make you triply anxious. I'll make you 1,000 times more anxious. And that's why, you know, um, in the last 4 or 5 times that I've gone back to visit, the canary couldn't even stand me to be there for 4 or 5. Last time he couldn't even stand me there for 4 hours. I was asleep and get out. You're making me anxious. It's not me making him anxious. It's his own anxious self-loathing, and the hill going, oh, you want to feel that way? Well, I'll make you. Now me, I would. I paid the taxes on that property for 15 years. I never thought I owned it. It's like you can't own love's beauty. You can serve it, you can be part of it, but you can't own it. And so I never owned it. I just was there to serve, and that's why I was never there more than 3 months of the year. I would go there when it was the prettiest, the nicest, the pleasantest. And I wasn't there for 3 straight months. I'd be there for a week or two, and then I get a gig to work, go off and work, and come back there. Or I would go down in the winter. I would go down to the Keys, and I had a little place down in the Keys, and I had a few other little places, like Superman's sanctuary, right? And that's how it is for me. I serve at the behest of love's co-creation. Wherever I'm needed, that's where I'm at. So that's why between now and next May, I'm going to be in a lot of places, right? And I want to come visit you guys, Go get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And, if you're living in America, give me your phone number. We can chat, right? And I'd love to come, spend some time with you, get you interested to see what you're doing, help you out, like my friends here, this place is severely, severely haunted because it is also on some very strong ley lines and Indian, energy. And this house was part of a southern plantation. And this house was the slave neck of the woods, right? And so this house has been around for at least 100 years, and it wasn't all built at the same time. There's little chunks of it, so it's like built like Lego blocks. And so there's some severe energy, a lot of suffering went on this land. Maybe not in this house per se, but even in this house, I think so. And there's a lot of really, 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 really suffering energy. And so I've been here for about 4 days, and since Thanksgiving, the day before, and I've been here the whole time. And what I've done was done ceremony, saged and done other shamanic ceremony to cleanse this place. And the things there were some really bad smells in here. It was infested by a lot of things, but you couldn't track it down. Like, when there's vermin or insect infestation, you can see where, it's usually where you left the pizza pie behind the pizza, but behind the couch, and you forgot about it. And then there are all kinds of fruit flies and things eaten at that. Or there are lots of causes by infestations. But this house didn't have any of that. It was spiritual infestations. So I spent that's why I really only did one live chat since I've been here. And also the Wi-Fi wasn't working too well. I had to figure out how to fix, and that was another. It was like possessed. So anyway, I've done a lot of things to cleanse this place. So when my friends get back, they're going to be happy because the vermin is gone, and that's why they were a little. I don't know. You want to stay here, and they wouldn't tell me what was wrong. But I said, there's something going on here, and they didn't want to say what it was. So I've kind of, and what it was, it's like a little mixture between the ghost whisperer slash, um, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters. So I didn't bust anything. Mm-hmm. What I did was, listened to everyone's story and gave them a space to not have to be as miserable here. And I didn't tell them to get out. I just said, if you need to stay here, you can stay here, but you don't need to be as miserable as you are. And all of them were uplifted by that and were pleased by that. And so the space is like right now, I mean, it was ice cold, and because there's hardly any heat in this place. But once I got everyone semi-happy, the temperature didn't change, but that ice cold into your bones was gone. So if I'm wearing a sweater and a nice little something over my shoulders and a hat, 60% of the heat in your body goes off your head. I'm quite comfortable, so. Yep, wholeness. That's what it's about. That's that whole concept of, homeostasis. That's what I always look to manifest, homeostasis in myself, balance, balance. And the ability to navigate, right? So, Jackson, message restricted. Mr. Jackson, we need to hold you. Are you part of the Toad crew? Hayden. Johnny Jackson. It's a school. But schools are prisons too. See, nothing has to be, anything can be what you want it to be. You could be in jail. I used to work in jails as a shrink and counselor. And I never liked calling myself that. But the people I worked for, that's what they would, got paid for. And basically, there were a lot of people. First of all, there were, I would say, at least half the people who are in jails in America don't belong there, right? And they're there because of their economic and their social and their racial, status, right? And that, we live kind of in a plutocratic fascist corporate state. I mean, that's what fascism is, the corporate state. Go look it up. Go Google fascism, right? And go Google, the great one, El Duce and Adolf Hitler, because both those guys, were running fascist states, and what they were corporations were running everything. Kind of is what China is. But see, back in the Cold War, the United States was, capitalist state, and Russia was state capitalism, right? And now, and neither were fascist, right? But because China is a corporate state, but the state is a fascist state, right? And so they give the population, the material, car, a house, clothes, sneakers, iPhone, all the crap food they want to eat, but nothing for their spirit, right? So that's why China's going to have some problems coming up soon, because they can't keep up their economic growth to the point that they can keep everyone employed. Now, in the United States, we are a land of smoke and mirrors. So, they say that our employment's the best that it's been in 60 years. Well, when I took my first course in, statistics, I remember my teacher saying, "Okay, kids, I'm going to teach you how to lie with numbers. There is no truth." So when Donald Trump says fake news, he's right. But see, everything Donald Trump says is right, right? Donnie has done nothing worse than any of the other scumbag politicians, and pretty much 99.9% of all legislatures, all the way down to your dog catcher, is bought off. We have the best legislators money can buy, and they represent, like a good example of Obamacare. Obama won. People were sick of those wars, right? They were sick of George Bush. They were sick of Dick Cheney. They were sick of that neoliberal, neoconservative, two wings of the same fascist bird. So they put in, the first black man, and Obama was, doubled down on what George W. did, and he started more wars, Libya, Syria, and Yemen, and 20 other wars that are all over. We have 900 bases around the world, and when I say bases, those are big things, where they land, that place that we have in Qatar, it's the biggest air base outside the United States. It's got B-2s and B-52s and every kind of fighter and missile, and it's right there in the middle of that. And then Donnie Trump goes and badmouths them, and they don't even throw him out, because, Donnie, what's the real interesting thing about our present status on the world stage is that we are I've been quite busy, having a good time, without a job, without any idea. Every day I have no idea where I'm going to go. I just let love's co-creation take me there, right? And so since, the last Wednesday, I've been here. I went out twice. Went and saw my friend who I did the live chat with. That was Friday. And so I went out Friday, and that's about it. I've been here because it's really pretty here, right? And I'm right on this edge where there's a snowstorm, like on that side of the property, and it's raining on this side, right? And we had some serious rain Saturday and Sunday. I mean, it flooded out the basement. But again, that was a spiritual thing, because I went down there and meditated, and there was like that much water in the basement, right? And it just came up through the concrete, because there's something underneath this house, and that water brought it up. So I went down there and prayed and smudged it, and then, so it didn't really, it's only kind of been snowing, not really. So, between Saturday and Sunday, it rained here maybe 3 inches. But we're on top of a hill, the rain shouldn't come up through the floor. I went down there, and because I could, that's, the cold went from up here down there, right? And the really interesting thing, so this house has been made out of different things, right? So not everything was designed at the same time. Let's see if I can walk over and show you this. So to get downstairs, they put in the staircase in a closet. Oh, I gotta get up anyway. Because if I stay in one place too long, I can't move. I move too much, I have to slow down. But so here's a closet, here's a closet. And there are the stairs. And here are the clothes, and there's the stairs. So there was no light here, so I put Christmas lights because I'm a big fan of Christmas lights. And after Christmas, the day or two after Christmas, I go and buy, that $32 light set for, $3, because that's what it costs Lowe's. Or they probably even got it for less. So whenever I travel, I always like these Christmas lights. I put them up there. And these things play music, but it gets so sickening that I stopped. I turned the music off. Let's see. You may have already mentioned this, but do you think new energy matters have come in or same as always? Well, Nikola Tesla talked about energy, basically discovered and perfected 0-point energy, meaning when you go look at the old-time physics, Newton, and you look at, Benjamin Franklin, and you look at Morey, and you look at Ohm, Voltaire, all those guys, they called it the vacuum, and they also called it ether. And they knew that there was energy because they understood that everything, see, we're so limited by our senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling. We only experience 0.0064% of the universe. The other 99.99, 62 part of the universe, that's what they call now dark matter, because they were kind of, once we started putting instruments in space, we could measure fields and gravity pulling this and that, and we may not see things, but we could see the effect of that whole part of the universe we can't see on the things that we could see. And so there is so Tesla and all these other guys understood this. They had it down. There was a bunch of Germans who came to the United States and went to California in the 18th century, and they perfected, gravomagnetic propulsion, flying saucers, right? In the 1840s, before the Civil War, they called airships, and they weren't balloons because, they didn't get the balloons until, the Greeks understood you could fill so do the Chinese. They'd have a fire and they'd put a bag above it and the hot air would make it rise. They understood that. But these guys actually had gravomagnetics, right? But the Germans with the Glock kind of fixed out. So if you go read Joseph P. Farrell's works, he'll explain it quite nicely, And David Icke's books, he goes into the historical, social dynamic of it all, and a guy named, what's his name? Mr. Research interviewed him. He's an economist, right? What's his name? His first name starts with a J. It'll pop into my mind. Catherine Austin Fitts is another person to go read about. So yes, there's plenty of, Nikola Tesla made the Wardenclyffe facility on Long Island, right? And Chase Manhattan Bank, which was the J.P. Morgan Bank, basically, but owned by the Rockefellers, built the Shoreham nuclear power plant right on top. Right on top of Tesla's Wardenclyffe facilities, right? And Brookhaven National Laboratories is out there. And everything from like Nassau County out to Montauk is one gigantic underground military deep, a dumb, as they call it, which is a defense underground. No, what do they call it? Yeah, defense underground, deep underground military base. That's it, and that's all of eastern Long Island. And the pimple on top of it is Brookhaven National Laboratories, and the facility that Preston Nichols writes about. And I knew Preston really well. I was part of the crew who went out to look at that facilities before they realized. And I knew those guys were what would you call it? Controlled. But I've never allowed myself to be, written in. See, you cannot be taken over unless you tacitly give up your free will. You know. Now the canary in the coal mine has, signed himself up for the baseline of Satanism. You know, he has no idea that that's what it is, but just because he wanted to be famous and this and that so frigging much that he allowed his you know imaginary mirror to go there, right? And so that's pretty much why the majority of the human race is controlled, because they've sold themselves for chump change. And now I haven't done that, so that's why I own Have Nothing, you know, and all the stuff. I have a ton of my stuff. Go look at George Carlin's skit about stuff. My stuff is a good 89% of it is uh, you know you know kept under lock and key by the canary in the coal mine at the school. And he goes through it and picks out some of the most personal stuff and then shows it on his YouTube channel and goes, ooh, it's like, really? It's like talking about, and I don't like to talk about, the deep personal scars that I have. I mean, I will talk about the dynamics of them that is relevant to everyone listening. And I'll tell you stories about things, but I don't go, I don't, wear myself on my sleeve. I don't complain per se. You know, I go on about things, yes, but I try not to complain. Right? Try not to blame anybody. Because my life is my life, and it always has been. So whatever, and I've made tremendous mistakes, and mistakes are good because you don't learn anything without them. So I don't have my two pairs of glasses, so let's see. Um, I'm a Libra, so balance is always on my mind. Now, see, if Libras can, I have a number of, the canary in the coal mine, he's a Libra, but he's doing this. And that's the way, if Libras do this, like a seesaw, go blah, 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 blah. They're the most, lost, sorry folk. But the Libra who can be a balance beam, that's why they call it a balance beam. It's about that wide, and people do somersaults and run up and down it. I have a sense, Miss CF, that's what you are. You are a balance beam. You're not a seesaw, right? And hey, Fish, good to see you, buddy. The chat is just a little blurry, but when I focus my eyeballs, I can read it. You may, but do you think new energy entities have come in? Well, they've always been here. Extraterrestrials don't come here. They don't come here. The flying saucers that we see up in space are ours, terrestrial made. Why we are in the hole for something like $700 billion trillion. We have no money left. That's what's going on right now. The power, the powers that be are trying to rebrand, right? So I've been trying to tell you the story about Cornell, and when I went into the math center that looked like the 2001 obelisk. Anyway, I went in there and I went into this conference room and I sat down and there were these three guys in suits. We call them suits, right? Not the general professor kind of rumply suits, but suits like in the Matrix, the agent guys, had sunglasses and wore suits like them, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm looking for the donuts, because I asked my, is there going to be cake? They got to have coffee, and so I was looking for my slice of cake and coffee, and this guy opens up his briefcase and he takes out a device that looks exactly like this. This is in 1991, exactly like this, right? Now, in 1991, would you even know what this was, right? Well, I looked at it, and I had seen a film made in 1948 by the guy who wrote 2001, and he was working for Sperry Rand, and he was working on this behemoth of a computer that was like, 40,000 square feet of tubes and switches, and didn't have a tenth of the capabilities of my little laptop here, right? And the thing was so noisy that he had a rectilinear microphone, meaning when whatever direction you pointed at a certain part of the microphone, that's what it picked it up. So when that part was pointed at our boy, all you would get was his voice. But when he turned it this one, it was like cacophony. So when in 1964, when I was taking computer sciences at a Catholic seminary, because I was going to be a rocket scientist for the Pope, this guy showed me. He had worked. This priest had worked with. He had worked with Turing in England during World War II. Breaking the Enigma code, and so there this guy was, and he picked up a pack of cigarettes, and he said, by 1970, everyone will have a device like this, and it will be your money, and it'll be your job, it'll be your telephone, it'll be your movie theater. He was talking about a smartphone, right? So when I saw that smartphone, come out of this guy's briefcase, and he slid it across the table at me, he goes, "What do you think that is?" And I picked it up, and right away I thought of that movie I watched in 1964, and I said, "This is a communication device that everyone will have by the 2000s. That will be their money, their communication device, and it will be their surveillance device, like in 1984." And the guy who was out, he had the nicest suit, one that was like tailored, not from J.C. Penney. He kind of leaned back in his chair, and he said, "I see why your boy sent you. You're a smart lad." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Okay." And then he said, "This is a device that we have developed, and we are developing the network to run it, and it will bring the internet to everyone's hand." And I go, "Well, what are you guys going to call it?" And he goes, "Well, we will come up with a tricky name, and that's what we want you. We want your opinion of what the general public will think of it, and what do we need to do to make this device something that the general public will accept." And I said, "Oh, okay, so what do you guys call it?" And he said, "Surveillance commerce." He said, "By using this device as a vehicle for people to buy things, we will be able to tell exactly who and what they are, what they think, what they feel, and we will be able to control them because we will feed them exactly what will make them feel comfortable, not what will help them, not what will make the country better, not what will inform people, but and not even connect them. It will be a device that will distract and separate the population. It will be surveillance commerce. So there are plenty of, so if you go, watch David Icke on the YouTube and read his books, he'll go chapter and verse about all the different entities that are playing around here. You go listen to Moulton Howe, Linda Moulton Howe. Go watch, all these people are in these conferences. When I used to do conferences in the 80s, there'd be like 6 people there. Now there's thousands. And we would put them on at this place run by the Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society. And there was another entity called the Thule Society. And there were a number of other social, spiritual, energetic, technological societies that I belong to. And these are things you didn't kind of, pay them $20 and you could be part of. No, you kind of had to be invited in, So in the 80s, I was invited into a lot of things. But by the 90s, I was still in them and still, part of them and still, doing what I love to do, and that is have access to old and sacred and deep information. But I, and I had some pretty powerful mentors, so I was allowed to do this. I mean, I helped start a NGO at the United Nations in the 80s. It was about alternative technologies. And Billy Kluver kind of helped me put that together. And I have lots of photos of it. I've showed you guys. Go back to all my old shows. Like I said, I got more than 700 now. And guys, you better start putting them on your thumb drives and your hard drives and your CD-ROMs, because at some point, I keep getting this Gmail from Google saying that they're going to change all of their operating systems as of December 10th, and I better sign on. And the last time they did something like that, I used to be able to do these live chats off my phone. And they changed all the protocols, so I had to do it off of a laptop, And I'm down to, is it just you, Miss Flower? Candace Flower, I like that, So where are you from, Candace? You in America? You got a couch I can stay on? Anyway, it's been 1 hour and 18 minutes. It's almost 11. And so, since there's only one person left, unless you got some more interesting questions for me, Candace, and I'd be glad to just talk to you on this chat, since everybody else is split. And now there's 2 people. Okay. So anybody got some interesting questions that I can put my little brain on? But anyway, we got 13 months of a window of opportunity. And then the unexpected consequences going to occur, And it could be, something very good, not so good, really horrible, what category would you put 9/11 into, right? And it's amazing how it's almost been forgot. It's just like Christmas. It's just, the tip of the hat, because, not until everyone dies from, The World Trade Centers were built in the 70s, and they wrapped everything in asbestos. And asbestos isn't bad material as long as it doesn't turn into dust. As long as you wrap it up, seal it in, it's really a great building material. It doesn't burn. You wrap steel up in it, and that's why that building, the World Trade Center didn't come down by those airplanes, because all the steel in those buildings were wrapped in asbestos. So the steel couldn't even melt, right? And I was an apprentice electrician on those buildings, and they were built to never come down. They were built to survive 2 707s hitting each building. And up until the time of 9/11, there hadn't been any steel concrete buildings to come down from a fire. And they were in Brazil and in England and in a lot of places. There were buildings that burnt for days, and the metal, the steel did bend, but the buildings didn't fall down, and they were 30, 60 stories high. There was a couple of buildings in Brazil that burnt for months. It burnt everything, and finally, the only thing that was left was the steel and concrete, and it was damaged, but the buildings didn't fall down. So, to have 3 buildings on one day, the first time in recorded history that modern steel concrete buildings came down, and you had Tower 1 and Tower 2 and Building 7, right? Building 7 didn't even get hit by anything except some falling trash, right? So, open your eyes, wake up, take a look, because you got 13 months to figure out what's going on. Now, if you want, one of the good things, if we could come together and bring forth the Traveling Video Art Circus, that would be quite a great service to Love's co-creation, But, if you want to troll your life, be miserable like the canary in a coal mine, to blame, why me? I worked so hard turning this into Pee-wee's Playhouse. Well, if he were to take it and use it as a set, or make it into a B&B, there are loads of people who would love to give him money to rent out those little rooms he's got, But anyway, it's all right in front of you, gang. It's all right in front of your face. It's like you can't miss it, but pretty much everybody's missing it. Oh, man. Oh, I'm going to have to get up again. Oh, my legs hurt. Anyway, so what time is it? Okay, so it's 1:23 and 2 seconds. So when it says 1:25 and 25 seconds, I will say good night. Sweet dreams. And I love you all. And let's pray a little. Okay? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And Candace, you know what this process is? It's a process of energetically balancing everything, right? So it's a shamanic tool, and it came from Samaria, and it represents certain frequencies, right? And that would be, Candace, do you play any music? How does music, affect you? How does light affect you? Yep. I'm glad everyone who came was here. That was a nice chat. And I'm fading fast here. Yeah. So here we are coming up on 125. And at 125.25, I will say good night. And thank you for coming aboard Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And go look up my xratted.blogspot.com. It's where my novels are. Yeah. And, I spell X, X rated, but it's X rated. And because it is, the stuff in my novels is straight up. And, that can affect a lot of people. Oh, you're hurting my, I don't want to hear this. Oh, reality. I don't want to hear about reality. Oh, even though it's a metaphor, And I try to be like James Joyce, who's, who's a cut and paste man. And, I'm a guy, the griot. I tell the stories. So I got some really good stories there. And the griot I got it from is my superconscious mind, my pluggy boom boom, and so go read them. I'd love to hear some comments. At least, I get maybe since I've had that. When did I start that? Maybe a year ago, or 6, 8, 10 months. Who knows? But a year to 10 months ago, I started xratted.blogspot.com. And I put up a number of parts of novels, And the last one I put up was same as it ever was. Don't believe anything I say. And then I had a few other subtitles. And the kind of responses I get from people, oh, this is amazing. You're so brilliant, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's nice. It's good for my ego, but I don't need that. What I kind of need is how it affected you, more, how it affected you, what you got out of it, right? And a few people were pretty good at that, and others, because these are just rough drafts. These aren't finished products, but I wanted to put them out there for you guys to read. So xratted.blogspot.com. And the way to get a hold of me personally is at my Gmail, which is thedudewake42@gmail. Now, the problem with Gmail is I get so much spam, it's unbelievable. So, and if I forget to look at it a day or two, there's like, 100 Gmails here. And there's a few of the troll guys who are really disgusting. Now I talk about a lot of physical things in my novels, but they're not disgusting, right? Now, people who are prejudiced against, the human, spirit might find them disgusting. People who are prejudiced and only believe in one thing, no matter what it is, they might find it. And that's why I put in there where you have to say, this stuff, might, be upsetting to you. Don't read it. You have to click to read it, right? And a couple of them are up in the cloud because they're longer than Blogspot gives me the space to put an individual title on. Anyway, but I'd love to hear from you at the Gmail account. I'd love it if somebody threw some money into my my PayPal, because I really don't have that much. I'm riding on fumes. That's another reason I didn't go out for the last few days. I'm in a nice place, and the place kind of needed my energy to deal with ancient spirit mechanisms going on here. And because I didn't enter into it with fear or anxiety and just love co-creation, the things kind of cleaned themselves up to the point where they could be happy, or at least somewhat satisfied, right? So I'm sure my friends, when they come back, will be quite amazed, but not really, because they've known me a long time, so they know what I can do. So contact me on my Gmail and leave me, Candace, if you're living, excuse me, in the United States, and I can call you, leave me your phone number. We can chat. And I would love to chat to any of you who aren't a troll and who are interested in love's co-creation as an energetic. So, okay. Oh, look at that. That's even better number. So it's 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 20 seconds, and we're counting down to 30 seconds. Here we go. So good night. I love you all. I'll see you soon. I'll keep doing this, especially when I can find people to interview.